Hey guys, so here we are in part two of the grass growing, moss growing effects tutorials. Um, so in the last one, I kind of showed you just sort of this like basic method that I use all the time to have these sort of organic spreading effects. And I thought maybe in this, I'd show you a few other methods as well. So this method is also very simple. It's really great for grass. You could use it for other plants and stuff too if you want. But yeah, we're going to be using Simple Tree to kind of animate some grass like you see here. It's a little more dynamic. It's not just a stiff model that's scaling up. It's actually sort of growing and unfurling as it's spreading as well. So it's a cool effect. It's very simple. This will probably be a pretty short tutorial, but yeah, let's get started. So first thing we're going to do is drop down a geo, and we'll put down a circle or just something that you can scatter onto. And let's make this polygon XZ. Let's give it like 60 divisions, make it a little bit smoother. And the uniform scale is fine. Okay, and then let's remesh it because we want to give it some geo. So let's bring this down to like 0.029, give it a little bit more density there, just so that I can use a MOPS shape fall off. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to preview the fall off. And let's make this, instead of linear, let's go spherical. And let's change the inner outer radius. Let's make this like 0.46, a little bigger. Uniform scale, I don't know, 0.959, something like that. Okay, cool. And let's make sure to give this some normals. And if we click this on, we can see that we have normals. Great. Oops. Yeah, let me save this. Let me call this grass growth 2. Working. Cool. And the next thing we want to do is we want to scatter some points on this. And we can turn this off here. Turn off that preview, but let's go scatter. Great. And let's turn off the relax iteration so it gives us a little bit more of a natural look. And then what I want to do is I want to check on this density attribute. And instead of using density, we're going to use MOPS fall off. So what that does is it basically makes the concentration of points higher where the values are 1 and lower where the values are 0. So I can, if I turn this back on, you can see where it's white, it's like more dense and it sort of fades off at the edges. And you can control this more with your little slider here. You can scale it up or down, but it's a nice way to kind of get a little bit more control. Instead of just having sort of a uniform distribution, you can have them sort of concentrated in the center like that. Okay, and then I'm just going to do 100 points. We're going to increase this a lot later, but for now, just for the speed of working and showing you guys this in real time, I want to show you, we'll just do it like 100 points. Okay, and then the next thing I want to do is let's put down a copy to points, and there's the points we want. Let's make ourselves some grass. So we're going to put down a line. Oop, not inflate, a line. Okay. And we're going to orient this in the Z direction. So put 1 in Z and check that on. And you can see that it's now pointing from the 0 to 1 in the Z direction, which is what we want. It needs to be that way for when you copy things to points. It aligns to the Z. And we can check on this here. Let's give it like 6 points, and then let's give it a length of like 0.16, something pretty short. Okay, and then we can put down a resample. Let's make sure we check on the curve U attribute. We are definitely going to want that. And then let's give it like a length of 0.012, something like that, so that we have a few more points in there. Great. And let's mess this up a little bit. Let's put this into a mountain. Oops, like that. And for this one, let's do an amplitude. Let's do 0 centered. And let's do the amplitude's already at 0.25. Let's decrease the element size. Oh, actually, you know what? It's not doing anything because we need to do, instead of noise along vector, we want to turn that off and just give it this general noise. But when I do that, see, it's like totally messes it up. It messes up the way it's aligned and all that. So what I want to do is I want to have a blend attribute. And with a blend attribute, you can use attributes to say where you want the noise and where you don't want the noise. And since, if you remember, in the resample, we checked on curve U, you can see we have a value of 0 to 1, so we can use curve U as our mask. So instead of blend, we'll use attribute here, and instead of mask, we'll just change this to curve U. There. So now the 0 stays affixed to the 0, which is great. Okay, so let's adjust this a little bit. Let's bring this amplitude way down to like 0.006. And then we'll bring the element size way down as well. Bring it to like 0.053, something like that. Okay, that seems reasonable. Just kind of give it a little bit of variation there. And we can turn off this curve U thing here. Okay, and then lastly, let's put down a bend. And dang it, get in there. Okay, and hit G on the keyboard so we can actually see what we're doing. And let's bring this down a little bit. Let's kind of bend it up like that. And maybe let's bring this up a little bit so that the bend doesn't start quite there. And cool, we'll put down a null. And there we have it. We have a little piece of grass. Okay. So for now, let's just plug that in and see what we get. And we can adjust this later. So let's put this into the copy to points. And boom. Okay. We've got our grass. Now it's all very uniform. It's all aligned upwards. They're all aligned in the same direction. So let's randomize this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a mops randomize. I like using this because it's just easy. And what I want to randomize first is the orientation. But I don't want, I'm going to just, oops, delete channels. 0, I'm going to 0 all of these out. No, 0, 0, and 0. Okay, so this is back to where we were. So now for this, let's rotate this one a little bit. Let's go like 1080, or 1080, and then we'll do in this one minus 1080, something like that. So now you can see it's a little more randomized. That's great. Okay, let's also randomize these values a little bit. Let's do like 8, excuse me, and minus 8. And then here we could do like 10 and minus 10, something like that. Gives it a little bit more randomness. Okay, cool. Let's see, something else we can do. Let's randomize the p-scale. So we could do that in the mops randomize here too. We can do randomize uniform scale. And for that, we could do the max value of like, I don't know, 1 or 2. I think the minimum value, I don't want 0 because I don't want them to disappear. So let's, I don't know, something like that seems reasonable. Okay, so that's looking a little bit more natural already. Great. Okay, what else can we do to give this more variety? Well, we can add variants, and that is a very easy thing to do. So the first thing you need to do is create a few more different types of grass. So for this one, let's zoom in on here, see what we got. We've got that. We've duplicated it. Maybe let's change the bend a little bit. Let's make the line maybe just a bit taller. Let's change the mountain so that it's like, maybe increase the amplitude a bit, something like that. Okay, and then maybe we can increase, change the offset or something like that. Okay, and then let's just copy this whole thing, make another one, and then this one we will increase the bend, but why don't we do it in the opposite direction, like that, and then we'll take the mountain again, and we'll change the offset, maybe make the element size a little larger, maybe the amplitude a little smaller, and for the bend, let's just decrease it just a bit, something like that. Okay, so we've got these 3. How do we get it? How do we randomize that? How do we put these in here to randomize them all? Well, that's going to be with a variant attribute. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, we need to create that on each of these guys. So we'll make an attrib create, and the name we want is variant. You could name this whatever you want, but I, sick, excuse me. I'm a little bit sick, so sorry if my voice sounds a little crazy, but um, you can name it whatever you want as long as it's consistent with what you name it here in the copy to points. It says it's looking for a piece attribute called name. So we're going to check this on, but you could name it whatever you want. I'm going to call it variant. Okay. And so the name, we got the variant, and it's a point, it's a float. Great. Let's copy it. Let's put it here. And then let's duplicate it, put it on this one. But instead of having the value be 0, let's make it 1 so that it's different. So we have variant 0, variant 1, and then variant 2. Okay. And then what we want to do is merge all of these and plug them in. So right now, you can see if I click this, they're all sort of merged into one, and I'm copying it to points, and it's copying each of those little like merged clusters onto every point, which is not what I want. I want each point to have randomly select from one of each of these variants. So the way I need to do that is I need to make sure that I have a variant attribute on the points as well, and that each one is assigned a random number. So the way we can do that is we can put down an attribute adjust integer, and the integer's name is variant. It's already in there. Great. And if we plug this in, you can see it's doing something, but we want to make sure that we use set initial, and then we want to increase this to 2 because we have 0, 1, and 2. So if I do it to 1, it's only going to copy the first 2 randomly. So there. So now it randomizes each of these. That's pretty cool. And you can do this to constant. You can do it to random. Oops, sorry. So what I want is random, and I want to make sure it's between 0 and 2. And you can, you have like this ramp where you can sort of adjust things. You've got the seed that you can change. So great. So now we have our random grass. Cool. Okay. What do we do now? Well, let's animate it. So there's this great tool that I use all the time called Simple Tree that it's designed for building trees and plants and stuff. And it comes with like a simple, like you can start with like a base trunk, like a simple trunk maker. It makes you a trunk, which is cool. And you can animate that or whatever. And I think I've shown this in some of my other tutorials. And I will definitely be making a lot more tutorials with this Simple Tree because a lot of the plant stuff that I do is with this plugin. Highly recommend it. It's really, really great. And it's not a subscription. You just buy it once. It's very inexpensive. And then you just have it. It's awesome. But what you can do is you can create your own curves like we've done, and then use those curves in the Simple Tree. And the way you do it is you just put down this Simple Tree initialize curves. And there you go. It just makes it, somehow it does its magic, and it makes it formatted perfectly for using for growing with the Simple Tree tools. And we can turn off this visualize mesh, this width. We don't need that. But if you wanted to visualize that, you could do that with this here, and you could change the width profile. It kind of gives you a little skin, but we're not even going to be using this width thing. We can just turn that off. Okay, so now that these are initialized, we're going to put down a simple grow. Okay, and this is awesome. What it does is it gives you this slider that basically just grows them all for you. And I like it because it gives you this sort of like curling, scaling animation. And you can keyframe that. That's really great. And you've got some great options here for adjusting the look. So let's start with the growth tab here. You can change the growth blending so that it kind of like has like a bigger curl like this, or kind of a tighter curl. Like if you put it to 0, it basically just grows upwards linearly. It doesn't actually like curl. And the more that you put it this way, the more that it sort of curls around itself. So what I'm going to do, I think I found a value of like 0.924 worked for me. And then you can change this too. You can change where the curl starts. So this is the root, this is the tip, and the higher, I think I want it to be like right around here, something like that. And so let's see what that looks like. Cool. That's pretty cool. Maybe, I don't know. And then you can also use this adjust, you can twirl down this adjust growth thing and you can adjust it to make it more randomized so it's not all uniform. So you can use a noise and let's blend it a bit and bring the element size like way down, something like 0.25. So now they're all kind of growing it, they're untwirling at sort of different rates. Some of them have bigger whirls and some of them have smaller whirls. Cool. Okay. And then we can also do this unfolding amount. And this is basically how much it wraps around itself. So if I kind of place this down towards the middle here, and bring this to 0, then there's like no unfolding. But the more I increase it, the more it's going to like twirl around itself. So you have this fun control here. Cool. But I think for this one, because I didn't want it to be like too twirly, because then it looks kind of cartoony sometimes. 93 worked pretty well. And then also you have this adjustment of like how much unfolding you have. And you could do random per branch, but I like noise. Gives me a little more control. So let's blend it. I don't know, something like that. Make the element size a little smaller. So now some of them have like, some of them unfold faster, some of them unfold slower. So why don't we, for now, just sort of keyframe this so we can see what we have. So we'll start at 0 and let's go to like, I don't know, frame 72 and bring this up to 1. Okay. And then just let's hit play and see. Cool. Okay. So we're getting somewhere, but it still looks kind of, they're all growing at the same time. There's no like natural life to it or anything like that. So what we can do, there's a few great little modifiers we can use. It comes with this, Simple Grow comes with this delay effects thing. And if I turn this on, just by default, it kind of gives you this like smoothed out animation and it kind of bounces at the end. And you can adjust the stiffness of that. So if I bring the stiffness like way down, it's going to be like super floppy and bouncy. Like that. And then the damping, the higher the damping, the faster that it sort of comes to rest. So I found a good value for me for this one was like 0.8 in the stiffness and somewhere around 0.421 in the damping. And that seemed to give me sort of like a nice balance between this like smooth unfurling with just a little bit of kind of this overshoot at the end, but it didn't look like too cartoony. Maybe a little less damping. Maybe kind of make it just a little floppier, I guess. Something like that seems kind of good. Okay. And then the other thing we can do, Simple Tree comes with a wind modifier, the STT wind modifier. And for now, to get that going, let's let me go back to the start. Let's turn off the delay effects just because that's going to solve. It actually is a little mini solver, so it kind of takes up some memory. So to get this to run faster, let's just look at what the wind modifier looks like. So we got that. So by default, now they're all sort of jittery, right? I don't want that. I think I want them to be sort of this like gently blowing in the breeze. So you have all these controls with like global, your global strength, your global speed. So let's maybe bring the global speed down and you won't notice that effect until the playhead goes back to 0. Why am I? Oh, just because I have both of them selected. So there we go. Seems a little better. Something like that is kind of nice. Just kind of give it a little bit of motion. So even when it comes to rest, there's still sort of this like nice windy motion happening. So it doesn't just come to a stop, but you can, of course, modify that. You can break this to strength. You can make it like 3. And this is directional noise. You can make it like, make the wind direction 1, give this a thing of 5. So it's kind of like wind is coming from one way. You have sort of these rolling motions. You have large wavy motions, small wavy motions. So you have like a ton of control in your wind. I couldn't tell you, exactly what each one of them does. You just kind of have to play around with the sliders. The great thing is it's all just real time. So it works really well. Let's turn off this direction. I just kind of want this to be sort of a general noise like this. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Okay, and then let's turn back on our simple grow, see how that looks. Nice. Okay. Oh, and then let's turn back on our delay effects. And sometimes if this ever messes up and starts like glitching out, you might have to come into the simple grow and to the solver settings and just hit reset simulation. And that usually just fixes everything. Okay. And so let's just turn that on, see how that looks with the wind and everything. A lot smoother. Nice. Seems pretty cool. Okay. But how can we make this even better? Well, one of the great things about the simple grow is you have this growth control. Right now we have it set to manual and I've keyframed it. But you can also do it by attribute. And you can use any attribute you want as long as it's on the points. So the growth attribute I want to use is mops fall off. So let's put down another mops shape fall off here. And let's turn this to spherical again. Let's do preview. And for now, let's just come back here. I'm going to turn off the wind. And I'm going to turn off the delay effects just so that I can see this in real time better. And under the global controls, let's do mops fall off. So you can see where the mops fall off is 1, it grows. And where it's 0, it doesn't grow. So essentially by controlling the size of your fall off, of your mops fall off here, you have control over how fast and where the growth happens. So let's keyframe this. Let's bring this down to like 0 here, or like right there. Okay, and then let's go to like frame 72, and let's bring this all the way up. You might have to go past 1 just to get this to go there, something like that. Okay, and then let's just hit play and see what that looks like. There you go. So now it's growing from, the inside out, essentially. But if you wanted this to, you could have it grow from left to right, or you could use a noise pattern. Then you don't have to use mops fall off. You can use any attribute that you want. You can make your own noise in a point VOP and map it to color, and then use color as your growth attribute. Whatever you want, really. But it's great. Okay, so let's turn on the wind modifier again and turn on our delay effects. And let's see what we have. It's looking pretty good. Okay, so now that we've sort of done that, let's crank up the amount of grass we have. Or well, actually, first let me show you how to kind of turn this into geo, and then I will crank up the amount of grass blades that we have for the final thing. So basically, all I did was I put down a sweep node afterwards. And then instead of using second input cross sections, you just change it to ribbon. And then what you can do is, just bring the columns down to like 1 and bring the width way down. And then we could apply a scale along the curve, kind of put down some markers here. We can make the tip sort of pointy like that. We can bring this way back, something like that. And maybe make the width like way smaller, something like 0.013. I don't know, something like that. And then make sure under UVs and attributes that you compute UVs, and that will give you can see that each one has UVs on them now. That's great. So we can add little textures to it, do whatever we want. Okay, so now if we hit play, we can see we've got this geo. And that might be like too wildly, I don't know, I may want to adjust how curly it is. It's kind of whipping out kind of crazily, but actually, it's kind of fun. It's kind of a more cartoony, motion designy, motion graphics look versus like realistic. But you kind of have to balance, how much overshoot you have with the stiffness and damping you can get it to be more just sort of smooth and realistic, or you can make it kind of like bouncy and cartoony if you want. So we'll leave it like that for now. Okay. And let's see. Let's crank this up. Let's crank up the amount of points we have. So let's bring this to like 6,000. Now this is going to take a little while. It's going to be obviously, we got more points. We got more to solve. So it doesn't run quite as in real time. That's why I had it like 100 points first. And you may need to adjust your mop shape fall off so that it is smaller here. Cool. So if you put the uniform scale down to 0, it kind of freaks out. So you got to leave it at like something really small. Okay. And then let's put down a file cache, and let's put that here, and we'll call this grass 02. Okay. And then I don't think I need 240 frames. Let's just do like 120, something like that. And let's just hit save to disk, and we'll come back in a sec. It's going to take maybe, I don't know, just a few minutes. Okay, so it took about maybe like 6 minutes to cache that, so not the worst, but now we have it. And I made a little cache, a little playhead, a little preview here. So that's looking pretty cool. Of course, we can go back and fine tune, how much it's flipping out. So it's probably, I don't know, maybe a little too cartoony right now, but I don't know, I kind of like it. It's kind of fun. So, but it's totally subjective, right? You can do whatever you want. But let's take this one level further, and let's do something else. So what I like to do is I want to put down a MOPS waveform, and instantly it makes this giant thing that I don't want. But what I do want to do is let's come to the waveform, and let's make the frequency higher and the amplitude lower. And this is, I love using this one. And basically what it does is it creates this sort of wavy thing, but you have a lot of control over it. What I want to do though, I don't want it to be waving like this. I want it to be waving radially from the center out. And the way you would do that is right now it's taking the Z attribute. So this is the Z from left to right, and outputting Y. So basically that's why it's going up and down from left to right. But if I give it a different output attribute like MOPS fall off, let's put a MOPS shape fall off. So first let's come here and let's do preview fall off, and let's make this spherical, something like that. Seems good. Okay. And then if I come here and change this from PZ to MOPS fall off, instantly, oh, it does nothing because I spelled it wrong. There, MOPS fall off. So now you can see it's doing it radially. And we can adjust, maybe let's make the frequency, let's set up a camera maybe, something like here, or just kind of getting close. And let's just change the frequency to, or the amplitude to 0.038, just something really low. Let's make the time scale like 0.3 so that's slower. It's kind of cool. And then we can do a fade out too. So what that'll do is instead of just continuously doing the sine wave thing, it'll kind of ripple and then slowly come to a stop. So let's do that. Let's do fade, and then I'm going to untick this fade repeat and have it start from 1 and go to 120, which is the maximum length of what I did the cache for. Okay, and then let's just run a quick flipbook here and see what that looks like. Okay, so here's what we've got. So I'm really liking that. It kind of gives you this like extra rippling leading edge across it. Makes it feel even more like life, bouncy, lifelike, motion graphy. I like kind of adding layered effects like this that really give it a lot more motion and animation. So, and of course you can tweak the MOPS waveform. You can make the amplitude higher. You can do whatever you want there. So, okay, cool. So let's stick with that. Let's come out to a more fully finished frame, and let's light and texture this guy. So let's come up and let's put down a camera. Let's jump into it, and let's put down a null actually, and parent the camera to the null. Come to the camera, pull it way out in Z, just so we can see what we're doing. And then in the null, let's rotate this along the X so that the camera is kind of looking down at it. And then of course, in the camera, let's go to view, and let's give this a higher focal length, like 80. Let's make this kind of make a flatter, more graphic looking visual. And then we can zoom in again here, something like that. And then in this null, maybe let's bring this up in Y. Oops, here, let's bring this up in Y just a little bit. So this is kind of more centered. And maybe we can even, let's bring this down more like, so it's kind of looking across, something like that. And then again, in the camera, let's zoom in a bit so that we don't see the front of this circle so much. Something like that, okay? Cool. All right, and then let's put down a dome light. Let's do RS dome, just so we have something lighting our scene. And I'll go into my, I think the one I used was, let's just go to light. It's just this, a modern industrial HDRI from the Grayscale Gorilla collection of HDRIs, but you can put down whatever you want, okay? And then let's just come here and we'll fire up the render viewer, see what we get. Let's turn off this. Oops. Damn it. What am I doing here? Turn off. Cool. So, and then something I like to do is in the camera, let's go to view or redshift camera, optical, and change it to filmic, which then immediately blows everything out. And let's just kind of adjust the exposure a bit. And let's come to color correction and turn on tone mapping. Okay, so the next thing I want to do in my dome light, let's let's, what was I going to do? Transform, or sorry, go to the environment and untick this background thing so that you don't have the background showing. And then we can just kind of position this here. We'll do it, kind of turn it till we get a nice look that we like. Let's do like -129, and then maybe in this one here, let's bring this down a little bit. So like, I don't know, -33, something like that. So we can have some nice contrast. We could see the shadows of everything. Okay. Cool. And then let's put a material on this. And let's do, so we'll just go to render tab, type /matte/grass, which is a material that does not yet exist. So we will click this little arrow, which pops us into the material context. And I will put down an RS material builder and call this grass. And instantly this is going to turn gray. Let's refresh this. And then we'll come into our grass and start building this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to pull in an attribute. So remember, we still have the curve U on these. So I will do a RS point attribute, and we're going to change this to curve U, and let's just plug this into the base color for now. And then we'll need to refresh this to see what it did. You don't really notice a difference yet, but if you put down a ramp, you can then move the black slider up, and you can see that I now have this gradient from the bottom to the top of the piece of each grass. And so I can use this to color it. So let's do that. Let's move this one up a little bit, and let's make it like kind of a medium green. So let's come in here, let's make it dark, maybe desaturate it a bit, something like that. Maybe good. Okay, cool. And then let's make the tip kind of more of a yellow. So come up here, maybe desaturate it a bit, something like that. Could be good. Okay, cool. And let's see, what else do I want to do? Let's plug this into, let's give it some subsurface scattering as well. So let's plug this into the MS color, and under subsurface, let's crank this up a bit. And at the bottom, we want to tick on thin walled, and we can play around with the subsurface to kind of get different looks here, but maybe we need to make this a little bit more yellowy. Let's kind of move it, make it more saturated, a little bit more yellow, something like that. Okay, that's kind of cool. But what if we made a little bit more variety here? So let's actually duplicate this guy here, and we'll make a different one. And I'll plug that in here, and this in here. And let's make this like even darker, like that. And then let's make the tip more of like a saturated yellow, like a saturated green yellow, like that. Maybe choke this up a bit. Okay, and then let's mix between them. Let's do a color mix. And we'll plug this one into number 1 and this one into number 2. And then what I can do is I can put down, oops, MS color. I can put down a Maxon noise and use that as my mix amount. So if I basically solo this, you can see what the parts that are black are going to have some certain colors, and the parts that are white will have different colors. But you can, play around with this a little bit, but that kind of gives me, I feel like, a little bit more of a natural look. And of course, I can adjust the scale. Kind of helps. Now, I'm not really seeing my subsurface too much. It doesn't feel super yellowy. So let's come back up to the object level. And let's, oops, this is number 2. I want to go to object. Let's put down an RS light. And I'm going to move this off to the side a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. And let's come out. And I want to make this light a spotlight. So we'll go spot. And let's put down a null. We'll call it target. Okay, and then in the spotlight, under transform and under look at options, we can just drag in this target. I like doing that with spotlights because then when I move them around, they're always going to be aimed at that null. So let's kind of position this, I don't know, kind of down, off to the side a bit, maybe kind of backlighting it a little bit to give us some light kind of shining through these. And let's do, let's maybe make the intensity lower, like 10. And bring the exposure up a little bit. Let's do under the spotlight, let's bring the cone angle down. So it's just kind of in the center, giving ourselves a little bit more contrast. Let's maybe bring the fall off angle, fall off curve up. And let's see, something like that might be good. Let's bring the target up in Y a little bit. And that's moving the spotlight here, but I didn't see a difference in this. So let's change the viewport. There we go. That's a little better. And I don't know, I'm just kind of messing around till I get a result I like. And then let's maybe come back to the material. Let's go to subsurface. Let's bring it way up. See, down, up. Let's also maybe increase the roughness a bit. Okay, that helps a bit. And let's give it some bump too. So let's do a Maxon noise. And we'll put down a bump map. Plug that in there. Into the bump. Great. And it's doing something. You can see there. Let me make this a little larger. Let's solo this so we can see what we're doing. So I don't really want that kind of bump. I want something a little bit more that feels like, if you look really closely at a blade of grass, there's these sort of like thin, long, rib-like little lines that sort of go vertically along a piece of grass. So let's do like a VL noise, and let's come to the input output, and we want to change the source from object to UV. And what that will do, if you zoom in, if the noise is really tiny, but that will get it to stick to the object. So if the object is moving in the wind, the noise won't like flow through it. It'll be stuck to it, which is really nice that we can do that. And let's increase the overall scale to 10. And let's scale one of these way up on an axis. On the Y, let's scale it up to 5. So now we have these like long sort of rib-like structures going through there. Okay. And if we unsolo this, we now have a bump that does that for each one. You can kind of see it. And that's probably way too much bump. Let's bring it down to like 0.001, something like that. And then let's maybe bring the roughness down, make it kind of shiny again. Because now that we have some bump, it kind of gives us roughness. And yeah, I think that's starting to look pretty good. Maybe a 0.3, something like that. 0.2, 0.3. Seems pretty good. Okay. Cool. So that is basically it. I also just put down a geo or another grid. Let's do, oh shit, just type grid, and let's do a UV project. And let's take this grid, kind of move it like this. Right now it's intersecting this, but let's kind of move it back behind this, and let's hit there. So now we have sort of a background here. So it looks like we have kind of a sky or something. And let's take both of these lights, and then under objects, do enable light mesh association and drag in our grass thing. Because I don't want the light to affect the background thing. I only want it to basically affect the foreground. And then on our background, we'll call this BG for background. The render will go /matte/BG. And we will now create a new material, RS material builder. Call it BG. And pop that on. And then let's just put a ramp in, and we'll pipe this into the base color and also the, dang it, get out of here, the emission color. And let's crank the emission up a bit. Something like that. And we can change the, colors on this to be something a little bit more fun. So we could do like bring this black one up so we can see. Let's make this like a kind of a greenish blue, something like that. Ooh, what have I done? Get rid of this black. I don't know, something like this. Maybe bring the white down so you can kind of see. I don't know, give yourself a nice little gradient, something like that. It's kind of fun. And then maybe instead of having it fully illuminated like that, let's do like a, I don't know, 0.35, something there. So now we kind of have this somewhat sky-like thing. And cool. Let's do a few more things in our camera here. Let's bring the highlights down a bit. Maybe in the optical, we can increase the exposure a bit so we can kind of make it brighter like that. And then let's give it some depth of field as well. Oh, and other thing I could do, you notice these grass blades are all kind of jagged. Under Geo, under the Redshift object, under tessellation displacement, we can do enable tessellation, and that will basically subdivide these. So now they're all curvy. There we go. Don't have to worry about that anymore. So let's, under the camera, enable Legacy DOF, uncheck this, and tick on bokeh. And then click this guy here so that we can click on our screen somewhere and define where we want our focus point to be. And then, so let's just bring this aperture down to like, I don't know, something like that. And of course we need to expose to compensate with the exposure. So let's bring that down. Maybe the aperture could be even lower, like 1.45, something like that. And maybe 2 is good. Cool. I'm liking that. The highlights are feeling a little blown out in the back there still. So let's bring the exposure down. Let's go to the color correction, bring the highlight exposure down so it's not blown out. And that is pretty much it. Oh, the last thing is if you want motion blur on this, we don't actually, if we're looking, if we kind of hover over our final guy here, and we don't have a V attribute, you need velocity attribute. So what we'll do is drop down a trail node, change this from preserve original to compute velocity, and then we'll just plug that in. And then under the render settings here, so objects, we'll go out. We will go to Redshift. Let's make sure under the advanced, we have motion blur, go enabled, deformation blur, instances. And then on this guy here, on your actual geo, go to settings, Redshift object settings, and then mesh deformation blur from velocity attribute. and you'll get velocity blur on this, or motion blur. So that is pretty much it. It's very a useful technique to make some like nice close-up grass that grows. You could also bake this out as an Alembic file, and you could instance this on a bunch of points and then kind of time offset them to make like a really large piece of grass spreading. You also, something cool you could do, you know, you don't have to sweep. If we come here, let's duplicate this. You don't have to just sweep a ribbon, right? You could do a path deform, and you could put, so this is the spine curve. You could put a model in here. So if you had like a model of a flower or something, you could basically sweep it along each one of these splines and have them sort of take the animation from the spline. So if we did like I don't know, let's do a pig head, something like this, and let's make it smaller, a lot smaller, like this. Let's see what this does. Maybe this might just crash the whole thing because it's like a shitload of geo on these. But if you had less pieces of grass, or if you had like, oh, it did it. Cool. Great. And maybe let's let me try something here. Come back up to this. Let's just decrease this down to 100. And then come to here. And we'll just plug this in here. Just kind of showing you an example of something. This is stupid. I don't know why you would do the pig head thing, but you could basically use the path deform to, you can, you know, offset the position, or you can, you know, basically stretch this so that it basically goes along the whole curve like that. And then let's try, let's put down a null. So obviously this would need to be turned. Let's do 90, like that. Yeah, there we go. So basically this will then grow. You'd have to kind of map it a little bit better with, you know, how the fraction of the length or whatever. Let's try maybe less. But you could do, you see what I'm saying? Or you could basically, you know, instead of having to just sweep these as grass, you could put flower models, or, you know, tendrils, or whatever kind of model you wanted onto this geo, and then use the growth for it. So that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think I'm probably going to do a third installment of grass growing, where we'll kind of do an even more dynamic version, where we have it growing and simulating it in Vellum, so that there's actually like dynamic stuff. You know, you can have wind modifiers just like you can with this, but then you can actually have like a collider, like a foot stepping on it, or a ball rolling through it, and the grass would actually collide with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you soon in the next tutorial.